If you enjoy Victorian homes, Eureka, California is definitely the place to visit. Sarah and I take this episode of History Hunters to the city on the Lost Coast to check out the beautiful sights of 3 Victorians and a side trip to check out the Humboldt Bay Maritime Museum. So it is August. We did not expect this kind of drizzle today, but this is the historic Victorian house, the Carter House Inn. It's an actual reconstruction. The Carter House Inn may look old, but it actually isn't. It's an exact replica of the Queen Anne style home that was known as the Murphy House in San Francisco. The Murphy House was constructed by the architectural firm of Newsom and Newsom. It was located at Bush and Jones Street until it was consumed by the fire that spread throughout San Francisco as a result of the devastating April 1906 earthquake. In 1978, Mark Carter found the blueprints for the home in an antique store and rebuilt this structure in Eureka. He intended for it to be a private residence, but due to construction cost overruns, it was opened as a bed and breakfast inn. I don't know about you, but houses like this just blow my mind. I typically see them in old pictures because most of them have been torn down. Very few remain in the country today, but very rich people would build things like this, these grand Victorians. This one had a number of different Victorian styles. It's owned privately by the Ingomar Club. They don't let anybody in there but their members, but I am just really happy to see that something this grand that was very popular among rich people back in those days is still standing. Most of them have been leveled. You think about all the grand buildings in San Francisco that have been leveled also, by not only by earthquakes, but fires and things like that. And just with time, they don't stand the test of time like this one has. The club has preserved this one. Unfortunately, I cannot take you in it.
William Coleman Carson lived from 1825 to 1912. He arrived in San Francisco from Canada with a group of other woodsmen in 1849. He tried mining for gold for a while, but found wealth in lumber instead. In November 1850, he and Jerry Whitmore felled a tree, the first for commercial purposes on Humboldt Bay. All winter, Carson and his team hauled logs from the freshwater slough to the Pioneer Mill on the shores of Humboldt Bay. He permanently went into the lumber business in 1852. 2 years later, he shipped the first loads of redwood timber to San Francisco. In 1863, Carson and partner John Dolbear formed the Dolbear and Carson Lumber Company. 18 years later, in 1881, as the company moved into areas more difficult to log, Dolbear invented the steam donkey engine, which revolutionized log removal. At about the same time, Carson was involved in the founding of the Eel River and Eureka Railroad with John Vance. Before building his mansion, Carson said, quote, "If I build it poorly, they will say I am a damned miser. If I build it expensively, they will say I'm a show-off. Guess I'll just build it to suit myself." Samuel Newsom and Joseph Cather Newsom of the firm Newsom & Newsom of San Francisco were 19th century builder architects contracted by Carson to create the house by 1883. In 1884, on the eve of construction of the Great Home, the company was producing 15 million board feet of lumber annually and shipped all over the globe. Pacific Lumber Company purchased the company in 1950 and maintained milling operations at the original Humboldt Bay site, located bayside below the house, well into the 1970s. Following the Carson family divestiture of remaining family holdings, including the home in 1950, the Carson family left the area. The Grand Home was purchased in 1950 for $35,000 by local community business leaders and now houses the Ingomar Club, a private club named after Carson's Ingomar Theater, itself named for Carson's favorite play, Ingomar the Barbarian. The mansion is a mixture of every major style of Victorian architecture, including but not limited to Eastlake, Italianate, Queen Anne, and Stick. One architectural historian described the houses as, quote, "a Baronian castle in redwood," and stated further that the illusion of grandeur in the house is heightened by the play on scale, the use of fanciful detail, and the handling of mass as separated volumes topped by a lively roofscape. Fortunately, the building has always been maintained and is in nearly the same condition as when it was built. In May 1964, the house was included in the Historic American Buildings Survey. While the house does merit National Register of Historic Places status, the Ingomar Club hasn't applied for it. In 1964, it became the first historic building in Eureka to be restored. Across from the Carson Mansion at 202 M Street is the Pink Lady House, built by William Carson as a wedding gift to his son Milton and bride in 1889. The Carsons sold the house in 1920 and it went through several owners before it was inherited by sisters in Germany. It operated as a rooming house until it was seized as Nazi property in 1942. In 1951, the mansion was sold at public auction to the father of TV actor Lloyd Bridges Sr. He restored the property as a notable landmark in the Eureka Historic District. Okay, we've made our way over to the Myrtle Grove Memorial Cemetery, established 1861, but there's something behind this cemetery office that I find kind of disturbing. Let me show you. Right back here is a bunch of broken up headstones. I have no idea what's going on here, but one of these grave markers right here is a Civil War grave, Company B of the 32nd Maine Volunteer Infantry. It's all busted up. It always kind of disturbs me when I see markers like this of people who deserve better, and for some reason the markers fall apart, have been destroyed, vandalized, or neglected. Well, this also is very disturbing. C.S. Ricks, California pioneer of 1849, and look at this. This is almost too hard to believe. Apparently they've been moved somewhere else, but that's really scary. Looks like only the infant daughter remains. I don't know, October 13th, 1914. Over many years, Eureka's oldest cemetery fell into decline, but attempts to improve it in the 1940s were fruitless, so in the late 1950s, the city of Eureka took control of the property and has since improved oversight and upkeep. Volunteers are striving to fix up the cemetery and repair and replace markers, but we are still unsure of where the bodies of 49er pioneer Casper S. Ricks and his wife Adeline ended up. Trying to find the grave of William Carson, the guy who built that elaborate mansion. And this is where he was at rest, and turns out they've all been moved. I don't know why. Moved to a newer cemetery. But right there, William Carson, 1825 to 1912, and his wife Sarah Wilson. And let me show you something. Right here, it says they've all been moved to Sunset Memorial Park in 1942. Makes no sense, really, because that's a newer cemetery, and mausoleum there looks ridiculously new. So it's presently unoccupied. I wonder what they plan to do with this. I mean, they spent a lot of money, a lot of stone quarried for this one. As a side note, I came across the grave of World War II Brigadier General Hammond Douglas Monroe, who passed in 1985, and that of his mother, Lucretia. We took a drive down the Samoa section of the Humboldt Bay, including the Inlet Peninsula. Why did you want to come out here?
Just to see it. We're going to go into the Humboldt Bay Maritime Museum. But first, we got to say hi to the critters.
The museum is a must-stop for those interested in the early days of sailing, especially as it relates to Humboldt Bay.
Okay, so this is the propeller and tow bit salvaged from the Eureka slough, where the Ranger had rested since 1926. This is a bell buoy. Let people know that you're entering the harbor.
The museum has an assortment of artifacts and memorabilia from nautical history. There is also a vast number of ship name boards on display, including those from the Ranger, Antelope, Madacat, Chilcat, and the Wawamet.
I see the Ranger was a tugboat. Wawamet was a ferry boat also. Sparrow was just about anything you could utilize it for. She started out as a tug, then she became kind of a fishing boat, then she went back to being a tug.
Museum displays recount the myriad of lost coast shipwrecks, such as that of the steamer SS Bear that ran aground in 1916 on Cape Mendocino. 5 died in the transfer of passengers to lifeboats. Also on display are the cups and saucers from that fateful ship.
Can I ring this?
Sarah's good for ringing bells.
Yeah, but am I gonna get... I don't know. Can I ring this bell? Oh, it has a stopper in it. Oh no, it goes this way. We're inside. I'm not trying to make it do it loud. Did you hear it at all?
Yeah, 1942.
It's only fitting that lighthouses, which saved many a ship from dashing against the ferociously rocky coast, are also featured. This is a lens from one of the local lighthouses, and this is memorabilia from lighthouse keeper Meao, who served on the Humboldt Bay and the Farallon Islands.
Submarine?
Inside the museum is a skiff built around 1890 by McDade Boat Ride for the Carson family. It's built of white oak and Port Orford cedar.
Hey, you gonna harpoon me?
Wow, that's so...
And then there's
heavy.
there's a tip that goes onto it too.
Yeah.
Well, it was attached to a ship though. It wasn't held by hand.
But I mean, I know whales are big and stuff. It just seems...
It's like a giant fishing line and a hook.
Yeah, but the hook is so thick. Like, I guess it's, if you shoot it fast enough, it would feel like it would penetrate, but
It's going in, but it ain't coming out.
Today, whaling has been outlawed by most countries, with the exception of Japan, but in the 1800s, the large majestic creatures were hunted to be turned into food and lamp oil. Increasing the hunt for whales was the gun-loaded harpoon and the steamship. Whaling was a multi-million-dollar industry, and some scientists estimate that more whales were hunted in the early 1900s than in the previous 4 centuries combined. In 1946, several countries joined to form the International Whaling Commission to prevent overhunting of these majestic creatures of the sea. By the early 1970s, the United States had listed 8 whales as endangered species and outlawed whaling in 1971. As the famous David Attenborough once stated, there is no humane way to kill a whale at sea. We have more videos in the works concerning the Lost Coast region of California, so stay tuned and please subscribe to History Hunters if you haven't done so already. As always, we appreciate you for coming along.